Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending. This is our April Long Range Recovery Committee. We are going to start the evening off with some staff presentations as far as we're going to go quickly down the metrics that we've been following. Again, my name is County Commissioner Darryl. I am District 1 Commissioner leading up this recovery effort. And tonight, once we finish our staff presentations, we are going to have an open forum where we can talk about some lessons learned. And specifically, what I'm interested in hearing back from you are, when we think about the recovery effort, there are some things that we did. We had a disaster assistance center. I want to find out from people that have gone through this process, give us some feedback on our disaster assistance center. If you had to rebuild, let us know how the rebuilding process works, whether it's through regional building, things like that. Our community partners. We've had some fabulous community partners, whether it's Black Forest Together, Process for Losses, our United Policyholder workshops. We would like some feedback on that. Some of the infrastructure repair issues that you're seeing in the community, tree removal. There are a lot of issues earlier on with the health department. Those are some of the parameters that we're looking at trying to do. And again, we've been trying to have lessons learned. I've tried to have at least 3 of these sessions just to get some feedback. So we want to know what are we doing right, what are the things that went wrong, what are some of the things in the event that this happens in the future that we can learn from. Next month, again, will be a very short meeting, another staff presentation to kind of go through some of the highlights. And then June, the goal is to be able to release an after-action report. And a lot of people want to know, well, what's the scope of that report? It is not going to be the report, from the sheriff's office or the fire district. It's really going to focus in on the county's effort with regard to what we were responsible for. There's some statutory guidelines that everybody has to follow. So we're going to focus in on, what are the things that we learned throughout this year. And my goal is that we just pick up from that, because we are going to have the sheriff is still continuing on in his investigation. I'm sure the fire districts are trying to clean some things up. I would like to, at some point in time in the future, sit down and get all the parties together, because that's important. We need to look at this and manage this as a community, so that we don't just have little stovepipes here and there. So that is on our goal to try to set something like that up. But that will not be the scope of the report coming out in June. So I just wanted to make that very clear. So real quickly, this shouldn't take but about 10 minutes to just kind of go through, 10, 15 minutes, our staff reports, and then we'll turn over the meeting to you. We'll start off with any of our citizen service support requests. Has there been any changes?
Yeah, no activity through that website.
Okay. Do we have a regional building update as far as permits or anything like that?
I don't see Roger here, Mark Gebhardt, County Development Services, but I've been talking to him. I can give our reports, which are pretty similar. As we've said before, Development Services permits are slightly different than Building Department permits, because we approve multiple buildings on a single drawing/site plan. Their numbers are a little different, but we've had in our office 195 single-family dwellings and 66 additions, which may be decks or other things that have come afterwards, etc., and 7 temporary uses for recreational vehicles to be lived in. The building department has had 177 permits for new single-family dwellings. And these are numbers. Actually, Development Services tomorrow morning is doing
total cumulative since last year?
in the burn area.
Yeah, okay, since last year. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking for them. I'm only giving what I had talked to them previously about. And tomorrow we're doing a short report item at the Board of County Commissioners just to bring some of these numbers forward and to start the process. If you may remember, some regulations were suspended by the Board of County Commissioners, and we're starting the process of discussing continuation of that or where we go with that.
Great. Thank you very much. Infrastructure repair.
Good evening, I'm Max Kirkbaum with Public Services, and following the pattern that we've used for the last several months, this is just a quick summary of some of the work that our in-house crews have been doing with road and bridge. This slide will show you the activity basically the last 30 days since we met at the end of March. And then the second one will be a little bit of focus on what we have coming up for the next 30 days. Again, this is a good transition month for us as we're starting to come out of some of the snow removal season requirements that keep pressing us throughout the winter. It gives us a little opportunity for some routine work such as pothole patching. Our issues may be not as significant as you see on the news with Colorado Springs and the city and the volumes that they deal with. But we have the same similar focus, similar issues that the city has, and we focus on that as well. This just shows some of the areas that we've been working. You'll always see ditching and flushing. It's going to take us a year at least worth of recovery for us to get some of our culverts and ditches back into good shape. We're going to keep pushing on that so that before we hit rainy parts of the year, that our culverts and our ditches have regained the shape and the volume needed to handle summer flow. One area that we focused a little bit on, there's some in the Brentwood area. There is a fair amount of construction activity in that area, and those roads have not ever really been up to county standard. They are substandard to begin with, so it's been a challenge to keep that area bladed properly just so the construction equipment can get in and out. And that's where we've put a little bit of extra attention in this last 30 days. We just finished a re-graveling project off of Burgess on Green Tree and Windmill, that loop. And we're moving on to new priority for graveling work here as that is finished up. And I don't know if we're done with snow or not. Are we, Brian?
I don't quit thinking about snow till after Mom's Day. So.
Well, as I recall, last year our last snow removal event was on May 8th, and the fire hit June 11th. So anything can happen. All right, for the next 30 days, again, we'll continue to focus on culverts and ditches. We are doing catch-up work on not only just on potholes, but asphalt patching in general, and we are getting ready to roll out our chip seal season in June. So we have some patch work to do before we do about 50 miles across the county in chip seal work. And we're going to continue to monitor that Brentwood area. We don't need to be in there any more than necessary, but I need to keep it passable to accommodate residential construction projects that are underway there. And we'll keep an eye on that to make sure that residents can get in and out with heavy trucks that are putting a lot of strain on those substandard roads to begin with. That's all I have, unless there's any questions. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of concerns that I'd just like to get on the record. Want me to stand up, or is this being recorded or anything?
Yeah, it is.
Judy Von Olafelt. One of them has to do with the drainages on Brentwood specifically. In a lot of areas on private land, people are throwing things into the drainage, trees and slash. And I think that needs to be addressed. In many areas, again, this is again on private land, and I know it's like, well, you mustn't touch private land, but it's going to create problems. We have trees being removed and dirt being loosened in the process, and no erosion control structures. Parks is doing a good job trying to address that problem, but the private lands aren't. I mean, we have rules for everything else under the sun in this county, and I think there need to be some minimum erosion control standards when trees are removed. So I'm not sure quite how to go about that, but I think that needs to be discussed. And then the other thing I'm concerned about are putting culverts on driveways and hills. I know engineers like to get water from point A to point B as quickly as possible and get it off there, but that just winds up building up ahead of water with a lot of energy and sediment removal power. And I think that throughout Black Forest, there should be a policy to try to keep the water as close to where it falls as possible. For example, when you have near the tops of hills, if you have a bunch of driveways that don't have culverts, that's fine because they act as many dams and they just, you know, shunt the water off to the side and you don't ever have the problem like you do on homes where there's so many culverts and it just comes roaring down the hill. You know, and so I think that needs to be thought about a little bit in terms of how the county deals with the roads instead of just using the usual engineering standards, because I'm concerned about that. Over the years, a lot of our ditches have kind of filled in and they're not very deep, but it hasn't hurt anything. They don't erode and they're not flooding anything either. You know, and as soon as we get in there with a backhoe and we clean them all out and we flush them and stuff, then we have problems with erosion. So I'd like to have some discussions about that at some point. So.
Great, thank you very much. Anything else? Do we have anybody that's going to talk about capital maintenance? Do we have anybody from engineering? Address that, or
Nobody here from engineering this evening, but on the engineering side, not much to add from what you were briefed in this forum last month, other than they are very near an award, hopefully, for the Shoup Road culvert. We've talked about it in this forum probably 4 or 5 different times. That project should be getting, I would say, by the time we get through cost estimating and award process, it's probably another 30, 45 days off, and then that construction will begin at that severely constrained area on Shoup Road. Other than that, I don't think Andre had much to add for this evening, but that's just a short summary for the one project.
That's another area where some uphill erosion mitigation would help a lot.
And that project includes it.
Good.
Okay.
Yay.
all right. Tim, you're up.
Evening, everyone. I am Tim Walker, Director of Community Services for Nassau County. Just got a couple slides for you, some updates tonight. Wanted to let you know that the Black Forest slash and mulch site will be open for the 2014 year beginning on Saturday. And you have the days and times that will be open now through the summer months, and so we highly encourage residents to take advantage of that. We have the SAMCOM board that does a marvelous job of many volunteers running that site, and many of you I'm sure have used it before. And so they'll be open for business starting on Saturday. We also have a number of improvement projects that are taking place in Black Forest Regional Park. It was at ground zero with the fire. Those are listed there for you. The first one's coming up on May the 3rd, this Saturday as well. 8:30 to 3 p.m. Rocky Mountain Field Institute's coordinating that, so if you know anybody that would like to volunteer, please have them go to the Rocky Mountain Field Institute website and they can sign up there. I was told today that most of the volunteer spots are taken for this Saturday, which is great news, but there's a variety of other dates coming up throughout the summer as well, so we encourage you to take advantage of that. Black Forest Regional Park Playground, we are in the process of opening up that, and we were fortunate to have the Classical Academy come out a couple of weeks ago, and they removed the rest of the 5-bar, the playground surfacing. That was our challenge, is finally thawed out enough they could do that. And then we've got an Eagle Scout project coming out in mid-May to put the 5-bar, the playground surfacing back in. We'll reopen the playground at that point. So there's a lot of children around Black Forest. We'll be happy to hear about that. Next slide, please. In regards to the hazard tree removal within Black Forest Regional Park, that has been completed as we talked about last month. I'll be out on site this Monday with our risk management staff to look at the trail system itself, and it's our hope to reopen the trails at that point. There will be some signage installed there indicating you need to stay on the trails at all times because we've cleared the corridors of hazard trees, but we still have other hazard trees within the park itself. But we'd really like to be able to open up the trail system again, and so hopefully we'll have a good response from our risk management folks, and hopefully within a few days after that we'll be able to reopen that up. And then finally, you're aware that we have put out an RFP to update our forest management plans for the Pineries Open Space in Black Forest Regional Park. Those are due back May the 15th. And so once we receive those, we'll go through an evaluation process and then select a firm to help us update those forest management plans. And that'll deal with events you see on the screen, from burn severity, noxious weed, post-fire, tree planting. So really will guide us over the next year or two in regards to the trees that we still have on site that we need to remove, and then hopefully, planting newer trees as well. We hope the process will also lead us to a timber sale. We have still thousands of burned trees within those two particular areas, so we need to determine some way to do that. So we're hoping that there will be private companies that will see value in some of those trees and utilize those for good projects as well. And so we'll tie all that together through that RFP process. And so if you know any companies that are interested, it's on the county website at this point. The proposals are due by May 15th. And that's my update. Unless anybody has any questions for me. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any community partners that want to make an announcement right now before we open up the public discussion? Aspen Point, do you have an event or anything that you want to?
We do. Thank you for asking. We have a couple of things coming up. At the elementary school, we'll be having a 3-week series starting next Monday for the elementary kids called basically How's Your Five? Friends, play, eating, family, and so forth. And we're going to be touching base and encouraging some resilient behavior there. The next one we're also having is called From Ashes to Memories. And that is an event taking place at the stables at La Forêt on the 17th. And we're encouraging people to bring some of the precious items they might have found in the rubble and the ashes, bring them in, and we're going to have, we have boards that have been sawn from lumber from the Black Forest, and they're going to be cut in 3-foot lengths. And you'll be able to put your items on the boards along with other dried flowers and decorative items. We have teachers from the Fine Arts Center that will be partnering with us and helping people do that. And so I think when you're done, you might have something that at least you'll be able to say, I can look at this board and remember this item was from Grandma's this or whatever. And we're really anticipating to have a nice.
Which day is that?
That's the 17th on a Saturday from 12 to 3. And again, we're partnering with the Fine Arts Center for that. And the last thing is we are currently just finishing a poster contest in the Black Forest for all the elementary school children, including homeschool kids. And it's called Regrow, Rebuild, Rebound. And it's their vision of the future of the forest. And it's not burnt sticks and flames. It's great. It's bunny rabbits hopping, and it's green, and it's flowers. And we're going to be having a public showing of that on the 14th of May at the District 20 atrium at the district office. And we'll be judging. We've asked several people from the community to be judges. And we're going to take the winning prize, grand prize winner, and have posters made of it, and give one to every elementary school child, as well as hand them out at the Black Forest Festival. So we're pretty excited about that, and we've got a lot of other things coming up as well.
Thank you very much. And I don't think we have a United Policyholder representative. Oh, go ahead.
SBDC, Liz Hirschberger.
Great.
I don't know if we have a lot of small businesses here from Black Forest, but just a reminder that the SBA loan for economic injury, the deadline is coming up, it's May 14th, and we can assist you with the filing of that. Also, the CDBG DR grant just became available today. Well, actually, the application is available on Friday, and it was approved today. There is going to be more money coming out in 3 to 4 months. We don't know for sure if it's going to be available for Black Forest fire victims. There is talk that it will be. One of the requirements to apply for this grant is that you have to apply for the SBA loan. Doesn't mean you have to accept the loan. You could be approved for it and then turn it down. So that's why I'm bringing up the deadline for the SBA loan. Because that's due in 2 weeks. We really need businesses in Black Forest to apply for it just in case this grant comes up in 3 months, so that you don't turn back and say, I wish I would have applied for it. We really want people to get this grant money. If it does come up that Black Forest will be included in receiving the grant in 3 to 4 months. I've left some books in the back. It's our disaster recovery and continuity guide, and it's to help you prepare for a disaster. Please take a copy. We also have copies that you can download from our website, but please take a hard copy with you tonight. And again, we offer free consulting and free assistance. So please give us a call if you're having any issues.
What number should they call?
667-3812. We also have a Twitter, SBDC Relief, where we announce events like this. We had this on our Twitter page. So we have multiple disaster consultants who will work with you. But I really wanted to bring up the SBA loan deadline. And you don't have to take it. You can decline it, but it's one of those things that they're not going to expect of you in case this grant comes up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And like I said, I know that United's policyholder, I don't think we have a representative tonight, but they are having their final roadmap to recovery workshop Thursday, May 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. They've been a fantastic partner, so please put that on your calendar if you still need some help with insurance.
That's the Woodland Valley
At
Chapel.
the Woodland Valley Chapel East Campus. Okay, at this point in time, now we will open it up to open discussion. We have a microphone here. We are taping this, so if you have any comments, please feel free. Again, to kind of go over some of the areas, give us some feedback on if you went through our Disaster Assistance Center, if you had any sort of interactions with regional building and our development services, those types of things that we're really focused in on our recovery. We really want to get some feedback, so feel free to come right on up.
I always assume you're the one talking.
It's okay.
Hi, most of you know me. I'm Rich Painter. I'll make my comments about the help over the process for our case, so people have a rough idea. First of all, we were total loss. We were not home, so we lost absolutely everything: vehicles, possessions, money, every piece of information you ever would think you'd collect, including the backup hard drives and the fire safe. So, lost our business in its total, and my wife is quite disabled, and so we have been struggling since day one. So let me tell you about a few things. Right off the bat, the Emergency Assistance Center was very good. There was a lot of confusion, but it was very good. It did some minimal things we needed. One of the things that was the most difficult thing, and especially for someone with somebody handicapped, is housing. It was impossible. We couldn't find a place to stay. The insurance company couldn't even get off ground zero for getting us a place to live, and we had to do it ourselves. We're in a temporary place out in Falcon right now, and it's the 7th place we've lived in. And trying to find a handicapped place in this town is impossible. And as a side note here, I think I should go into business, get a lawyer, and sue everybody who says this is handicapped accessible. Because businesses and all kinds of things from the medical side, you would think medical places would have good handicap access, and they don't. And so when you've lost everything and now you're suffering from trying to go through all this stuff, and the handicap stuff is impossible. The City Council of Colorado Springs and the Mayor's Office and the Police Department, whom I've all communicated with multiple times and asked them to enforce parking rules about handicap places, they refuse. So this is the kind of stuff you're up against. So temporary housing is a nightmare, was impossible, and I don't know how to deal with that, and other than saying that's an area that somebody could help fix in a disaster like that. Another thing that was a disaster, and I told the people at the Emergency Assistance Center the first time I went in there, is we will have problems with the U.S. mail. That was a nightmare, disaster. It's ongoing. I had a discussion today with a representative from the postal system, yet again. I've asked Congressman Lamborn's office to get some kind of rule changed inside the silly post office system that when you have a disaster, you need to have a way to have an extended forwarding mechanism. They do not. After 1 year, it's dropped. So I know people still haven't gotten back in for Waldo. And with our particular situation, we'll be lucky if we get into 2015, the way things are going. So my mail forwarding is going to run out. Now, they have an ad hoc, they've agreed today to have an ad hoc mechanism, but that's just crazy. How many disasters around this country do we have that displaces people for long periods of time where they still need to go back there and pick up their life, but it's going to take more than a year? You've got to have a system to keep the forwarding going on. We're not keeping me to go in and hassle with them every month on forwarding problems. So that's another area that needs to improve. Another thing right off the bat that was impossible for us to deal with was getting the 30 cubic yard roll-offs to put crap in. I waited 3 months to get one. And you can't do a damn thing on cleaning up your property until you can get these roll-offs and pull all this steel out. I have sent 2 30 cubic yard roll-offs full of steel from my computers, my file cabinets, my appliances, and my vehicles. Okay? I have a third one that's still sitting there that's almost full, but we haven't been able to finish. So I don't know how you do that, but every 500 families wanted 30 cubic roll-off containers instantly. And so we got on the end of the list somehow, and it took us 3 months. So that meant I couldn't do a thing for 3 months on getting that property cleaned up. One of the other areas is all the people who have helped or tried to help. These monthly meetings have been useful, but I don't know if, I'm sure you have, but there's fewer and fewer and fewer of the victims here. How many are victims of the fire? 3 of us, okay? And how many were there? 500 families, give or take? And I and a few others, and I think I've seen this lady here before more than once, but I've tried to come to almost every one of them and participate in some way. It creates a problem with this entity trying to listen to what the community's doing when they're not here to communicate about it. So I don't know how you solve that, but that's a problem. The first month or so with all the meetings, there were lots of people at. I still would challenge that there weren't all the people involved in the fire loss attending those meetings. But certainly in the last 6 months, it's dribbled way off. So I don't know if the effectiveness of this forum is working if the people it's supposed to be working for and with aren't here to participate. Okay? I don't know how you deal with that, but that's another observation for having come to most of these. The folks who provided direct support and aid to us, I would like to mention a few. And I will apologize if I've forgotten any of them, because there's been so many. First of all, one of the best ones that's been helpful is United Policyholders. This mishmash of insurance, and if anybody wants to talk about nightmares, talk to me about that. The insurance business on trying to recover from these kinds of losses is a nightmare. My company, USAA, makes me talk to half a dozen people. The vehicles are done with different people than the house, and it's a nightmare. It's awful. So United Policyholders has had these regular meetings. I've been to most of them. They're wonderful. They have people who've been through this. They have good information, and I think we need to continue recommending these things for this type of loss disasters. I don't know if they've been dealing with the people from the floods. I'm assuming they have, but I don't know what's going on up there. This stuff was great. So kudos to the United Policyholders and their actions. Another is Aspen Point. Our friends from Aspen Point are here. They've been very helpful. I don't know if I, and as an individual and my wife, have taken full advantage of their services. I know these two wonderful people specifically came to our house and spent a good bit of time talking with us. It seems like we don't have time even to go talk to people with my situation. So I don't know if I've fully exploited their help yet. I'm sure I haven't, and I probably should schedule some time for them to come and talk again. But they are very valuable. I don't know how they come into being in a disaster, whether it's partly them and partly the system that gets them involved. But if we have another one, I would recommend that we have them involved in some way. So they've been very helpful. Black Forest Together, of course, formed out of all of this, and I think they're doing a great job. They're, I think, strapped for trying to have a well-organized, coordinated volunteer structure so that we get a lot of use out of it. So I think over time this is going to continue to build, but they've been very helpful. Another was Crosses for Losses. They're right up there in Black Forest. Now, we're not there now because we're out in Falcon. So that creates some of a difficulty for us personally. But they've been extremely helpful, and they're really good people. And they're right there in the community. And so I would say that if there's a question about support for their organization, we need to give it to them because they've been very helpful. Let me jump back in time. Southern Baptists. They were very helpful for us, but like many of the other things, you had to wait a long time to get their service, okay? They came in on several different days with the right kinds of light-duty equipment to help get all this steel up out of that collects in your basement from all your appliances. And in my case, lots of computers and file cabinets and things like that are just impossible to deal with without big equipment to get it loaded in those containers. So they were very helpful. And let's see, Karen Scher and who's sort of were kind of working with Crosses for Losses. But early on, Crosses for Losses didn't exist. They formed out of this. Well, Karen Scher was helpful for quite a while. They were distributing food supplies down at the Pikes Peak Community College, and we participated in that a number of times. That was very helpful. So I would hope that these kinds of activities would continue again in another disaster. I don't know if the situation of others in Black Forest who continue to need that support right now. It's hard for us to take advantage of it where we're at, and so we tend to just, get the stuff at the grocery store and deal with that ourselves. But I suppose there's still families in great need up there. You guys may know that better than I. So they are still needed right now. Tri-Lakes Cares was another organization that really helped us a lot. They came in kind of after a couple months. They're up in Monument, but they got a chunk of money from somebody and made available stuff for us. They helped us with our meds, with all the medical stuff. One of the problems that we have, I didn't mention, is I lost my work, and my wife is disabled and lost her work in 2012. So we don't have any, support anymore. And because I'm the 24/7 caregiver, I can't continue working if I could kind of get enough business together to do it. So I just kind of gave up on that. And to make a comment about the SBA, back in, I don't know, July, August, September, sometime in there, we had the SBA and others come in up at the fire hall. And I sat down and I talked with the SBA. And one of the complications with this is, I'm a small business. I lost everything. Okay, SBA is a loan. That means you've got to have some way to pay a loan back. So here I want to go to ask the SBA for a loan, and I don't have any concept right now how I'm going to get my work back up to the level it was to be useful to pay off a loan. Yet now you tonight have said, okay, there might be grant money, but you can't access that unless you've gone through the loan application process. So I'm at ends with that process. I don't know how to deal with that. I can talk to you later about it, but I'm just pointing out, I went through all the stages that everybody made offer of, here's this, you can go try this. Here's that, you can try that. Okay? Here's another example. Because I lost my work, we were told early on to go and apply for, what is it when you lose your job? Unemployment. Never in my life have I ever been unemployed. And I've been paying into the unemployment system all my life. Okay, so I go and I do this process. I go through this process for the first time in my life. And they said, oh, Mr. Painter, your business, which pays me, my consulting business, I pay myself, only when I make money. They said in 2012, remember my wife had a stroke in 2012, so I couldn't work, so I cared for my wife, I didn't work. You didn't make any salary in 2012, and we only look back 1 year. Not for the last 40 years that I've been paying into the unemployment system, but 1 year. So you're not eligible. These are the kinds of things you discover only when you try to follow the offerings of help that come out as of one of these things. Now, they did in the end offer me a few weeks of $175 a week, which is, I think, their barest minimum kind of thing, that came out of a different fund that wasn't specifically the normal Colorado unemployment fund. It was a disaster unemployment fund of some kind of weird thing. So they twisted somehow on that. And they gave me a few weeks of that. And then, of course, to make that work, you have to then go into the system and look for work and all that. That's part of the rules. I started to do that, and first of all, I couldn't find anything that would take a super senior engineer working part-time from his house. There are no jobs. So that just fell apart. So I gave up on all of that and just focused on trying to do the recovery stuff. So all these things that come along sound nice, they make good media reports, but when it comes down to actually trying to exploit them for your use, to get them to help you, it isn't as easy as it may seem to some people. So others who stepped in were like Tri-Lakes Cares. They offered some money for replacing some of our medical equipment. I think they got us a dentist appointment up in Monument, because our dentist is gone too, believe it or not. That was an untimely thing. And so that helped out. Another group that has worked is Catholic Charities. Helped us. They had a chunk of money that they were focusing on for Black Forest fire victims, and they made some money available for us for, again, things like the medical stuff and our high medication bills. And then also along with that was the Salvation Army. So those are the key organizations. I'm sure I've missed some. I've named a lot.
Did you do Goodwill down at the expo center where you could get furniture?
No, no, I didn't. Part of our problem was we weren't in a place where we could get anything. I'm taking up a lot of time, but I don't see a lot of other people, victims, trying to talk. But most of it we were in hotels until the last hotel we were in. They had a fire in the kitchen, and they had no plan to get us out of the handicap room off the 4th floor where they had us. And I found that 2 of their fire doors wouldn't close. They were open. And I said, I can't risk this. So a friend of ours, whom some of you may know, Larry Stanley, who's a Black Forest resident, graciously let us come to his home. So place number 6 that we stayed at was we stayed at Larry's home for 3 months while we continued to look for a place to live. And we checked about 30 different places to rent, to find a place to live that could deal with a handicapped person with a wheelchair. It's It's impossible. In fact, my wife still can't utilize any of the bathrooms in the home we are in Falcon. Okay? It's a modern home. It's an open space, and that's why we finally settled for it. But she can't use them because it doesn't have enough room to get into these little closet-like things they build for bathrooms now. This is the kind of things you face. We relied on the community. We relied on our friends. I participated in just about everything and have contributed as best I could. But I still see that there's a lot of areas that improvements could be made. And it's the things that fall between everybody's organizations, the cracks, that where all these things I talk about where the problems are the cracks of the system. And I don't know how we fix them, but I'm here to help. I'm here to talk about them and continue on that effort, and I will continue to do so as long as I can. I guess I've talked enough. I'll let somebody else chat, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask now, or you can talk to me a little later if you'd like. So thank you very much, and thanks for all your help so far.
Thank you for
And
sharing.
I'll keep trying to come as best I can until we finish up these kinds of meetings. Okay, thanks.
Judy?
You want?
Yeah, I guess I'll talk.
Sure. This helps. It helps for the recording.
Thanks, Judy Von. I really hadn't expected to do this, but I've been writing furiously because I always have something to say. I guess I'll start out with what Commissioner Glenn mentioned about doing after-action reports. I mentioned recently that way back when they were talking about the fire code at the work session last fall, I said that I thought there should be a report similar to the Waldo Canyon report. That was a collaborative report with a lot of partners working on this, and not have the governor do a report and PPP do a report and the fire district do a report and blah, blah, blah. Okay, and it's just uncoordinated. This is a very large disaster. It's in a totally private area, unlike the Waldo fire, which was largely on federal land, or in other places where you have national forest and the community parked in the middle of it. I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, and so I think this is very important to do. I see we do have someone here from the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Management, so please be sure you take note of what I say here. I'm now talking about the Sheriff's investigative report here. I'm talking about the coordination of the Wildland Fire Team, getting their input in these reports of what actually went on in the field. Those kinds of things. And other things like the siren that we had at Rock and B, which has been sitting there rusting for a long time. It's my understanding that the Office of Emergency Management is in charge of that, not our local fire department. And Manitou just got a nice grant for a siren in case the flood comes down the hill. Why can't we have our siren so the people who are sleeping or need to call somebody, check with their neighbor who can't drive or whatever, has a little more notification. I have a lot of issues with the notification. This is no reflection at all on the TV people. They can only get what they're given. But to do this, well, now we're going to do Holmes, well, now we're going to do Black Forest, now maybe Vollmer. I was still on pre-evacuation when my house burned. And, there is enough lag between what comes out on the TV from when they're given the information, and as fast as that fire was moving, it is absolutely amazing that more people didn't die. We have no idea how many animals died. I know at least 9 horses, one of which was mine, and I know of 8 others, and there were maybe more besides that, and an untold number of other animals. Maybe somebody in the county has track of that was moving carcasses around, but we had never had an accounting of that. And so I think there's a lot of things like that we need to work on. I think the fire department could certainly coordinate with the OEM on helping areas that have HOAs or neighborhood groups have within neighborhood notification systems so that old person that can't drive gets checked. I had one lady call me at 20 after 4, 15 minutes before I got out of there saying, could you come over and shut my gas line off? You know, first of all, I didn't know how, and secondly, I didn't have time. You know, and luckily she wasn't right in the path of the fire. So I think as far as the rescue was concerned for animals, I think Black Forest Animal Sanctuary and some of the residents who stuck around even though they weren't supposed to were very, very instrumental in helping a lot with that. And then afterwards, Black Forest Animal Sanctuary and Crosses for Losses in particular looked after the owners because they had food available for the animals. You could go up there and get a bag of dog food or a bag of cat food or a bale of hay or something like that. The Saddle Club stepped up and had a free day a couple of days after, maybe a week or two after the fire, where people who had horses and had lost all of their halters and everything could go and get halters and lead ropes and buckets. And that for me was extremely helpful. In my situation, I had 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 horses. One of my horses burned to death. The other one was severely burned with a $10,000 vet bill, which thankfully some people very generously contributed to help with that, including Black Forest Animal Sanctuary. But of course I had no supplies for any of them, even kitty litter, you know, whatever. And so those kinds of things are needed as well as the water and so on for people. I think the county needs to find ways to partner better with the community. Rich brought this up, that, you know, he and I and the lady back here are the only people that are at this last meeting. You know, where are all the other ones that, you know, there were hundreds at the first meetings that the county had. So maybe those are the ones that needed help and just don't want to participate, but I think we need to find better ways for the county to partner. You know, I've been really frustrated, and maybe you have too, that we come here and we listen to the department heads give their reports, but it's like there's a lot more out there that we ought to be talking about. So maybe we could start with that tonight. I would ask, why are we having kind of a 1-year termination of the long-term recovery, you know, after 10 to 12 months? I think we need to explore ways of going on from here, identifying what the ongoing needs are, because there are ongoing needs out there for a lot of people. You know, I see Karen nodding her head. Crosses for Losses is especially in touch with people who don't like bureaucracies and are kind of on the fringe to begin with. And the Black Forest Together program is a little bit more into servicing those who need a case manager and want a more formal kind of thing. You know, but there's a lot of other needs out there, and I think we need to have some community forums to discuss this. I'd like to see the fire department involved in this too. Let's see. I think there need to be minimum land use rehab guidelines, especially for the erosion control. I think that is absolutely essential, and I don't know if it should go through county environmental services or some other, have a special person do this, get the county forester that we talked about or whatever. But I'm seeing a huge amount of destruction happening to the land surface in Black Forest. People want it clean, they want the trees out of there. They have no understanding of what this is doing to a system that's on soil, it's not on rock, and it's going to wash away when we get rain. I have some comments about the SBA thing too. I happened to be in the Black Forest Together offices when SBA was setting up. You know, and this is no reflection on you guys at all, it's just their system. Okay.
Remember, we're not SBA, we're SBDC.
SBDC, okay.
We're
Well,
the
this
small
is
business
the
development.
SBA thing
Okay.
through the federal government, okay? So they came in on like Monday, you know, and they set things up. I have a deadline for my newspaper on Tuesday. I went in and talked to them and said, well, would you like me to put this in the paper? Well, we don't know if we're going to get funded yet. Okay, so Wednesday morning, as I'm driving down to pick up the paper, which I just sent into the printer at 8 o'clock, I'm driving down at 11 o'clock, I hear on the radio, SBA funding comes through, okay? But it's only going to be around for 10 days. Now, I can't put it in the paper till the following Thursday, you know, and then by the Wednesday after that, they're out of there, you know? So, I mean, it just didn't work. And so that's something I realized the county has no control over, but you know, I went in and talked to the guy for an hour and a half, like Richard did, I'm sure, you know, and it's like, oh, yes, well, we want to help you. It's like, but first we need your firstborn, oh, and we need your fingerprint, and we need this, and we need that, and, you know, you don't qualify for this. I wanted to get a low-cost loan so that I could have some money to remove burned trees. Okay, that doesn't qualify. It's like, I don't need anything else. I mean, my insurance didn't cover that. And I thought, well, I'll ask for a $50,000 loan. I have 15 acres. That ought to do it. You know, so it was totally useless. So anyway, so that was an issue there. As far as the hazard tree removal is concerned, I have a long and bloody track record with that. But I think, you know, there were issues with how the process worked with that. There were issues with the training. I happen to know that the way they got the monitors that they trained for this was to go into the post office in the cafe and say, hey, have I got a deal for you? You got a driver's license and a cell phone? It'll take pictures? Oh, and can you take a drug test too? You're hired. You know, and then they have 1 or 2 days of training, and they're out there at the entrance of the park in the most critical places marking trees that have never been marked. You know, by the second week they had it figured out, but it was just things that I think had costs that didn't need to happen. And then, of course, the removal of the carved statues by the elementary school was the last, take the knife and twist it. It was the last afternoon of the last day when they cut those down, without just letting people know ahead of time that they were going to do it, that they were going to a safer place or whatever. It's like, you know, we are the DOT, it's our right of way, these are hazard carvings and we are taking them out. And when I went down, I went down and I chased down Anderson Tree Service and the guys. That afternoon they were down in Brentwood, and I drove up to them, rolled my window down and said, so what happened to the carvings? And I don't know if it was a Ceres or True North guy, but he said, we cut them down. And I said, so what'd you do with them? He said, we put them in the dumpster. Well, no, we didn't. We put them at the school. Now, Judy, you need to trust us. You know, and I was about ready to smack the guy. You know, but that's truly what happened. You know, and there are a lot of people that are very upset about this. There's no reason to treat Black Forest like that. You know, and I think that needs to be in the record. So anyway, I also wanted to mention that the Goodwill program, where they had the coupons for the furniture and food and stuff, that worked very well, and that was a really good partnership. And I totally agree with everything Richard said about United policyholders. Their meetings were good, and you know, there were a lot of good programs like that came out of this. So, and the other thing that I wish had gone better was the coordination with Mountain View on the hazard tree removal. I've heard a lot of complaints from citizens, and I don't have any complaints about Mountain View because what they did for me was fine. I actually asked them to cut 3 more trees than they had marked, and I asked them to chip, and everything was cool. But there have been incidents, especially in the last month or so, where Mountain View has gone well beyond the 50-foot line. They've torn up fences. The problem with FEMA is that the rules are to take all the material, which they have to do after the tornado in Oklahoma City to clean it up. But now we have bare hills. They've taken too much. And so, you know, that I think is a problem with FEMA. And I tried to get that rule modified, but it didn't happen. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
I have a follow-up, it's real quick, it's like Judy's.
You guys can tag team.
After Waldo, I've been volunteering for the sheriff's office, doing communications, radio work, as you know.
Yep.
And so I was actually involved with the first day of Waldo, even though my wife was disabled. Her sister was here, and I had the day off. And ironically, I got to set up the mobile command center up in Green Mountain Falls. Well, that was a very trying environment for us all, was Waldo. And right after that, and knowing my wife is disabled, I said, I will call and get the special notification set up and get my cell phone notified for these emergency notifications. Okay, so then along comes Black Forest Fire. We didn't get any notification.
Amen.
Okay? So when I called them recently, I said, why didn't I get a notification? And they said, we threw all that data away. Where's the competence here? What's going on? They said, we changed computer systems and didn't care to keep all these records so we could figure out why we didn't do a good job. Somebody should be taken to task for that. I still haven't got an answer why I didn't get a notification. And the second point of that is, I notified them after this Waldo thing that I had a disabled person in the house. And I would like to ask all the emergency services who went and checked on my house to see if my wife was there burning up or not. I think I know the answer is not a soul. So what is the purpose of having a system where you register that you have somebody disabled in the house when nothing's going to ever become of it? Here's a good thing that could be fixed on this. And that shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't have learned from Denver TV News at 4:30 in the afternoon that Black Forest was on fire when I had my cell phone right there and I had registered all this stuff. So I'd like to hear a response from somebody about that, and fess up to why it didn't work and whose job it was, and you know, fix that problem, because it'll happen again. If it happened then, it'll certainly happen again.
Anybody else? Come on up, sir.
I never got any calls. And I know I was registered.
I should know how the mic works, right? I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but this is my first meeting that I've been able to come to see you guys here tonight due to my schedule. I made the Manitou flash flood meeting and preparedness last week as well.
Tell us your name, he was-
My name's Brian Bledsoe. I'm the chief meteorologist at 11 News. I'm sorry. I should have not just assumed that you know who I am, right?
I don't have a television.
That's entirely okay. Yeah.
I don't.
But first of all, I'm humbled here tonight in front of you victims. I know you guys have been through an incredible amount, but the whole community has been through a tremendous amount as well. I've been through 2 of these now as far as covering this, and I've seen the different things go on just purely as an observer, whether it's bureaucracy or people coming together to help one another or whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I know one thing. During the Black Forest fire, we were on the air for Canyon City and the Royal Gorge fire when Black Forest caught on fire. And I go to my manager and I'm looking at my camera and I see a tuft of smoke in Black Forest. And I'm freaking out because I know what the weather's doing. Shortly thereafter, long before the official evacs came out, I went to my manager and said, I'm going to get on TV and tell everybody to get out of Black Forest. Period. And I didn't care what the repercussions were going to be.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I learned from Waldo that, and I grew up on a ranch, I grew up 30 miles from nowhere. And we had to rely a lot on personal responsibility when it came to that. And after Waldo, I didn't see enough personal responsibility within our communities being proactive about being prepared for these types of disasters so that when things actually did happen, they could launch that plan into place. Because to try to think about gathering things together when you're in the midst of a disaster, it's impossible. Period. It's already too late.
Your mind stops functioning.
It does. You're functioning on a different level at that point. So from, and I'm not speaking here in a media capacity. I'm speaking here as purely as somebody who's gone through this from that side of the coin. So you guys kind of know what we're dealing with and where we're coming from. But that day that I just decided to do that, I was putting that on my shoulders saying, I know what the weather is. I know where that fire is. And I know what it's going to chew through. So my advice from a safety standpoint, I speak to a lot of kids. The kids are my best ambassadors because they will go home and they will talk the ear off of their parents for the next 5 weeks about what I had to say to them that day, is emphasizing personal responsibility. I did a disaster seminar for District 11, focusing on everybody wants to know where the next fire is going to be. I mean, that's a pretty sad thing to start thinking about. I don't want to see any fires, but I think we all know what Cheyenne Canyon's all about. I mean, That's nothing that nobody really knows about. I mean, that's the elephant in the room over there. A lot of people think we have an arsonist running around. I mean, these aren't secrets. These are things that people talk about every day. The flash flooding. Manitou Springs shouldn't even be there after last summer. They dodged so many bullets. The point that I'm getting at is that whether there's a siren in Manitou Springs, whether there's a siren in Black Forest, whether there's emergency notification that is working or isn't working, there are a lot of things that are failing people when it comes to just purely being prepared. And when it comes down to these types of things, I tell my family, I said, we're not waiting for anybody to make up our mind on doing something. And so when that afternoon, when I didn't care what the repercussions were, I told my bosses, I am saying this on the air, that if you feel uncomfortable with what is going on, do not wait for an official decision. There's no reason to. And so many people get lulled to sleep by this. I have to wait for this ready, set, go. The pre-evac, evac, mandatory, you know what I'm saying? To me, that's pointless. And I know we have to go through a certain protocol with this type of thing. But to me, it is a flawed system. Because it's lulling people to sleep that, if there's a fire and you see smoke, you should already have your stuff and you're ready to walk out the door done. There shouldn't be this multitude of steps, which in many times is completely confusing to the people. It's confusing to us sometimes, and we deal with it all the time when there are disasters. So from my standpoint, that's probably the biggest message, whether it's flooding or fire or simply a hailstorm in downtown Colorado Springs. Should we be in my basement? Hey, if you're uncomfortable with what's going on, don't wait for me to tell you to go to your basement. If you see a fire heading to your area and there's no mandatory evacuation going on, don't wait for somebody to tell you to leave. And these are things that, that I've known just took for granted because I thought it was just commonplace. But after seeing these disasters that have basically ravaged parts of our community, that's a real problem, I think. It's the societal part of this that is really the issue to me. It's not the weather, it's not bureaucracy, it's not any of that. It's just simply getting people to understand it's okay to act yourself. Don't wait for somebody. And Rich, I know with your wife being disabled and whatnot, we've had a lot of folks come to us and ask, hey, can you do more about that? Can you tell people more about that and what they need to do? And to me, my wife's disabled as well. And we have a plan in place. I'm not waiting for somebody to come to my house to get us out. So, that would be the only piece of advice that I could give to somebody in the same boat in that regard. How do you go about doing that? That's something we have, would obviously have to be mapped out on a case-by-case basis. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I was talking to another resident at the spaghetti dinner the other night who wasn't a burn victim, but she lives in Black Forest. And she said they don't have a plan, they have 3 plans. What they do if they're both home, what they do if neither of them's home, what they do if the kids are home alone, or one of them's home, what the priorities are. This woman is highly organized.
Right.
She's a nurse, and she's working on a master's in nursing. But I think, I asked her to write something for my paper because I thought that the way she was approaching it was a very good thing to do. It's kind of like, I wasn't thinking too clearly when I put halters on my horses with my phone number and I used my landline. I called the emergency people right away, and gave them both my numbers. But when I set that up, I wasn't thinking about that.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think what she's trying to say to people is, rarely does one disaster, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. No. You plan for one thing, and 18 other things happen during that disaster that you need to have that A, B, and C for. So, yes.
I'm totally inspired by what you're saying right now, so I'm just writing it all down. But one thing to keep in mind today is America's Prepare-a-thon. So you can go on the web or wherever and just find tons of information. So whatever kind of plan you want to make, for yourself or for your family and just add to it, do that. There's tons of information out there. But also, I love what you said, if you're uncomfortable.
Right.
I was prepared for Waldo for 3 days and thought I had it all ready to go. And everything worked for us, except for one thing. And our home was fine, but we did lose our pet. But we were prepared. And sometimes no matter what you do, you're still not going to make it 100%, but we made it out better than a lot of people did.
Right.
So,
But you did what you thought you should do, and you at least took those steps. Now, I can tell you, just, working in media and whatever, you work with demographics. So you have a certain age group, you basically map out what those, most of those people are about, what's important to them, so on and so forth. Again, this is not a secret to anybody, it's what goes on. And what happens if Cheyenne Canyon catches on fire? What do you have to deal with over there? You have the Broadmoor, you have the zoo. You have very, very limited evacuation routes over there. You have a lot of people over there that I can pretty much guarantee you never are thinking in their mind that a disaster is hitting them. Even after what's happened in Black Forest, Waldo Canyon, Manitou Springs, it doesn't matter. Because I get yelled at when I'm covering severe weather on TV by those same people that are mad that I'm interrupting their show because that disaster is not happening in their backyard. So despite what we've seen as a community here for the past couple of years, which has aged me about 30 years, it's yeah. It hasn't. It's fallen on deaf ears, for a lack of better terminology.
The apathy is deafening.
It really is, and that's the saddening thing. So again, when I'm talking to people about this, and they're like, "Oh, what's the weather?" I'm like, you can't focus on the weather. This is not a weather issue. This is not a government issue. This is a societal issue to try to get people to understand these types of things. The people that died in Arkansas, the people that died in Pensacola last night, the people that died in Louisville, Mississippi, those people were waiting for help, many of them, or waiting to be alerted by a siren or a weather radio or whatnot. I gave a flash flood presentation on the west side of Colorado Springs last spring at this time. And people were all the same way, asking about, what's your biggest fear? You want to know what my biggest fear is? My biggest fear is that the sky is clear when I leave the television station at night at 11 o'clock. And in typical Colorado weather fashion, one lone thunderstorm develops over Waldo Canyon at 2:15 in the morning. How are you going to be prepared for that? Are you ready to tell your family to climb through the mud to safety? That sounds pretty extreme, but it's absolutely the truth. Don't wait for me on TV to tell you to get to higher ground. If you feel uncomfortable, you need to take these steps yourself to make sure your life is preserved. I don't know how we go about changing that. I mean, again, I talk till I'm blue in the face to the kids, because the kids are the ones that will go ahead and regurgitate that same information. And hopefully, like the 18th or 19th time that the adult hears it, it will sink in, or during the disaster, it clicks at some point, even though that I think that there's probably about a 3% chance of that happening. But it's the same. I don't know what we do. And I'm open to suggestions as a person in the media that has a vested interest in this community and has been through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears with what's gone on over the past couple of years. So if any of you all that have been through this have suggestions, I'm all ears at this point, because the disaster, there's going to be disasters that happen again at this community. I mean, it's ripe over in Williams Canyon for Manitou Springs for the next 7-8 years.
And 2/3 of Black Forest.
And 2/3 of Black Forest. You know, and that's another thing that people think, oh, Black Forest, well, they're not next to the mountain, so we don't have to worry about flash flooding. Wait a minute, you know, but you understand what we're trying to get through to get people to understand that. When they're seeing cars float down Lover's Lane in Manitou Springs, you know, they think, oh, that's just over there.
You know what might help is to have more information on the historical storms. I mean, you know what they are, and I know
Right.
what they are. That we can have 17 inches of rain in 3 hours. It's happened. We had 4 events in the last century along the Front Range, right in here, plus Big Thompson, plus the one in Fort Collins, you know, that had serious flooding from even a foot of rain.
Do you know what the worst part about that is? Because of our community and so many people, I mean, a large part of our population has moved in from out of state or in other locations. So what have we seen here since 2005?
Not a lot of rain.
We've seen more drought than flood.
Oh, yeah.
So
And the
perception-
same is true for blizzards.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
So perception is reality to those people. That's really all they know. So, you know, last year, this same time, I went on Facebook. I mean, at that point, we had
You are desperate.
probably, well, but as far as a reach out mechanism,
It's very effective.
with the social media aspect of that, in one post, I reached 75,000 people. I can't do that. I cannot do that in any other medium at that point. And I was angry at the people that were bashing us for talking about the flash flood potential. And that bottom line said, it will flood in Manitou Springs. And there will be lives lost in Manitou Springs. And yet people still thought that was extreme. Well, look what we dealt with this last summer. Do you know it didn't start raining until July? What happens if it starts raining in May? We have 4 months. If we have a truly wet season, we've got 4 months. That same thing goes for Black Forest, too.
Yeah.
And you're talking about hills and berms, you know, being devegetated at that point. I can guarantee you that a lot of the people that have rebuilt back the Black Forest have no idea what floodwaters are going to do and go in and around their places and how it's going to drain with the new landscaping that they have until they see that first rain event. And then they're going to be like, oh, wow. Yes.
I'd like to just say something kind of advocating for the people who were traumatized by this event. Every time there's a comment on the television about the Black Forest, even when it's a positive comment about rebuilding, regrowing, redoing something about a county meeting, what do we see? We see the entire middle of the forest burning up. And I want to tell you how traumatizing that is for children in our area and for the adults as well. A very good friend of mine sees her house burn several times a week, every week. And my feeling is it's not necessary to grab our attention with a fire because little children who aren't paying attention to the words look up and see their forest on fire again. And it's not until somebody tells them that, no, this was last summer, that they really can relax. So it's this adrenaline rush. It's a horrifying feeling. I mean, as a resident, I can say that. I can hear the words Black Forest. No one needs to throw fire on the screen to get my attention. I'm always going to listen when they say Black Forest. So I would really ask you to encourage the people at the news channel to really be sensitive to the fact that this ongoing trauma does not need to be dramatized on a daily basis on the television.
Sure.
As much as we love hearing what you have to say, we don't need to
The
have
showing
a hammer.
of the flames.
Yeah, we
Showing of the
tell, don't show. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And the same thing is for the folks that dealt with Waldo too.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
because you know whether it's Colorado Springs or Denver or national media, what's the first thing they're going to throw up when they talk about a community that's burned?
Yeah.
The fire itself. Okay. Yes.
I'm John Putnam. I've worked very closely with Colorado Springs Together in the Wolfgang Mountain Shadows area, and especially from the insurance standpoint. And it's almost 2 years since they had their event. And we're beginning to see, as part of their healing process, wanting to go on and start advocating the kinds of things that you're talking about. We can deal with all the science in the world, but this is all about emotion. And some of the people now are beginning to feel very strongly that the people in Cheyenne Canyon, Broadmoor Heights, various other parts of the community are not getting it. And they're getting ready, I think, to be able to tell their story. You don't have to show pictures, and I don't know how you do it because your news tends to be very short
Well, it is.
short bursts.
Right.
But at some point in time, if there's opportunities to interview these people, so people understand the real people who had no freaking clue that anything like this would ever happen, actually it happened to them, and how they dealt with it. And I think as we go forward, the magic for me, dealing with a partially perfect system called insurance. It's not perfect, but in Mountain Shadows, it worked fairly well to a large extent, but there's always exceptions. But seeing the resilience of the people, seeing the resilience of the community, and the way they all came back is just a huge testament, I think, to our community. And I think as that message gets out, that would be very helpful. I would also make the comment that today, people from the Lions and the state association, and then Bob Cutter and myself from Colorado Springs Together appeared at the National Risk and Insurance Program up in Denver, sharing the stories of our recoveries. And it's amazing to see the parallels, the inconsistencies between governmental programs, the overlap of governmental programs. And so societally, now that we know, because Colorado's gone from back in the pack to, I think last year we were the third most, the state with the largest number of catastrophes in the country. So for most of us, you talked about moving in. I've been here for 30 years. Even 30 years, we haven't seen a catastrophe like we've just seen in the last, we've had 3 of them in 3 years. So as we get adapted and as we get recovered, this will be part of the healing process. And you know, I appreciate all that you guys do to get the word out. The science is there. Well, the reports are there. I mean, everything suggests that everybody should be doing the maximum amount to mitigate, to prepare, to do all this kind of stuff, but we're all in denial. It never happened to me.
My last 3 disaster awareness presentations have all been titled the same thing: dismissing the law of normalcy. Because because they haven't seen it, they think it can't happen to them, type of thing. And unfortunately, nothing motivates people like a catastrophe. So it's a double-edged deal. You don't think the catastrophe can happen to you, but unfortunately, until you've been through the catastrophe, you're not motivated to really do anything about it. And and there's a very different demographic between the Mountain Shadows folks and the Black Forest folks. There's they are completely different people. And that just, to the nth degree. But they've both been through the same type of crisis, and you better believe that they'll be on the same page trying to motivate people in the future because of that, because they've seen it.
What are the differences that you're seeing?
That I'm seeing? I think they're wide-ranging. I mean, from a guy who grew up in the country, when that fire happened, I saw Black Forest as being more resourceful. I saw Black Forest as being, maybe more well-prepared. But there were a lot of things that I didn't understand, too, when I had those notions going in.
Or were they angrier?
Were the Black Forest folks angrier? In a different way. In a different way, I think, because I think many of them felt that Mountain Shadows got more attention than Black Forest. Oh no, Black Forest, you're out there in the country. Black Forest is a suburb of Colorado Springs, for all intents and purposes. And it spanned from west to east, whether it was from Glen Eagle or the far east side of Meridian. It didn't matter. And I think that there were those notions going in that just because the west side of Colorado Springs burnt down, so did Black Forest. Black Forest had more homes burnt down. And I think that they've maybe felt neglected at some point because of that. That maybe Waldo got more.
FEMA funding.
See, there you go.
They didn't qualify for FEMA, so because of the nature of the land being privately owned and so forth, so that was a big issue.
Exactly.
The Mountain Shadows didn't either, right?
Yeah,
For
they did.
FEMA?
You talking about
Yeah.
the personal assistance funding? The personal assistance funding?
Yeah, Mountain Shadows
It was-
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, early on, that was a big sore point with us, that, the county couldn't come up with justification because of the way
Well,
they,
so the
because
numbers were too low.
of the way they're calculated, they're forced to calculate.
Right. But both communities went through the same thing.
Sure.
Yep.
So I mean, when we're talking about motivating other people, and we're talking, you know, about unfortunately Cheyenne Canyon or Broadmoor Heights or wherever. I mean, it doesn't matter where it happens. You know, talk to the folks down at East Peak, west of Walsenburg. They had a catastrophic fire down there. You want to talk about completely getting ignored?
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's in a specific area. It's just different levels, I think, of people seeing.
It's different levels of inequality.
It is.
Yeah.
Yet we're all going through the same thing.
You needed a word for it.
You know, so to try to, and to your testament, I mean, you know, to try to get the people to be motivated over by the Broadmoor and Cheyenne Canyon, I don't even know if that's possible. And I've been doing this stuff for 17 years to motivate people for tornado safety back in the Midwest, where tornadoes are actually a life-threatening thing, to wildfire, to a simple hailstorm. I do the Ditch Plane and Ditches program for the city of Colorado Springs. We had a teenage girl drown in Sand Creek last year because, do you guys any know what the background is on this? She was given bad information to stay under the bridge. What? You know, whose fault is that? And I took that personally because I pride myself as trying to be an educator about that. Did I fail at doing that? I think we all failed at doing something like that. Especially the little girl that died. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the motivation, you know, how you motivate somebody that doesn't think that these things can happen to them. How do you motivate them to actually be proactive and do something until they've seen it? I just think it's purely mentality. Yes?
You know what the fire department in the Black Forest is doing right now is instead of trying to educate the individuals, they're motivating neighborhoods to work together to say, look, you've got the tractor, you've got the flatbed, you've got the chainsaw. Get together with 4 or 5, 6 properties, and if you can make a difference on that piece, that 30 acres, and you can do that here, there, and everywhere, it's a huge difference in an ongoing situation. Whereas before, it was more, everybody take care of your own, and a lot of people didn't choose to do that.
They just won't do it.
And there's a lot of anger out there from people who did, who live next to people who didn't.
Sure.
Who all got wiped out. And it doesn't matter what you say about Firestorm, they believe that it could have made a difference. And so I think we're really moving in a positive direction in Black Forest with that kind of idea of the Firewise community, along with Judy has been preaching for years in the newspaper for all the good it did. Yeah, I mean, it was just copy after copy. It's focused and featured on the mitigation.
Well, and I think those lessons are prime because, I mean, Black Forest is, I mean, during a wildfire, I mean, those routes to get out of there are tough enough.
Yeah.
Let alone over next to the Broadmoor when you're talking about evacuation challenges over there. So to try to take some of those lessons and pass on to those people, I mean, just something simple. My son and I, we go to a ball game or go to a big venue when there's a lot of people. I tell him, I say, you need to pick 3 different ways or 4 different ways to get out of here, and you need to have those to me in 90 seconds. Okay? So I know after something like that, that he is going to, in the middle of a crisis, know where everybody's going to go, and he needs to know where everybody isn't going to go, so he can get out of there safely. Again, it's just a mentality though, but something just that simple to somebody maybe over in the Broadmoor saves their life one day. If you know, and again, it's a lot of doom and gloom when you have to talk about this stuff because nobody wants to see these things happen, but unfortunately, they're happening, and they've happened a lot to our community.
Well, another thing to bridge off of what Karen was saying, we have, one of our biggest problems in Black Forest is that we have so many absentee landowners who do nothing to mitigate. We also have landowners who are living there who are doing nothing. But along our primary evacuation routes, especially in the main part of the forest, there are, maybe a dozen fairly large landowners that have enough frontage that it could be toasty if it's burning. You know, that I think the county needs to, again, have some standards, or else do either some carrot or stick behavior on the part of the assessor about a minimum mitigation level Doesn't have to be real severe, but to get that fuel away from the roads, so that you can get out. Because it's not nice to have the flame right up to the pavement.
Sure.
It's a little too hot.
I'm sorry, I spoke way too long. But
No, that's okay, and that's why we're having this, and, and I appreciate everybody having an opportunity to talk about it. But just kind of going back to an issue of why, at about the 1 year point, we're going to essentially deactivate the long-term committee, it's because we need to take it to the next level. Because we don't want to stay stuck here, stagnant, just having staff reports. Because I monitor the attendance and the type of information that people want. We need to now shift the focus to emergency preparedness, getting people ready, getting out into communities, working with community partners to do that. That's why it's important to have milestones and you check them off. And that's what we're trying to do. It's not like we're going to stop. We are now national experts by default in this type of area. But we need to take advantage and work on that indifference. And I keep telling people, I spoke last week to some young kids, and I go, to me, the biggest threat to our society is the destruction of the American family. And that family is not just the people inside your household, but it's also the people within your neighborhood. And we need to start. It's great to be independent out there. Hey, I want to be left alone. But at some point in time, we need to come together in a situation like this and take care of one another. And that's the success story that I want people to come away with when they start writing the chapter of what's going on in Colorado Springs and El Paso County. Because we get so much negative press, for people that don't live here. But I can tell you, I've never seen a community come together through 2 fires like this, stronger. We have a long way that we need to go, but we are still coming together. And that's a positive thing that we need to come away with.
I think that changes the mentality. Like I said, nothing motivates like a catastrophe. We just need to be motivated before the catastrophe. Yeah. Thanks, Darryl.
Thank you. Any last minute comments before we wrap up?
If you don't mind, I'd like to just address some of the things that have been going on. Steve Reed from the Emergency Management Office, El Paso County. I wasn't here for Black Forest, and I think maybe, as I've said to others, you might want to actually keep me here in Colorado Springs a little bit longer, because I wasn't here for Hayman Fire. I got here a couple of weeks after. And then I wasn't here for Waldo. I was down in Florida. I wasn't here for Black Forest. So when I've been here, and I retired out of the Air Force in 2007. So I've actually been here, I think now this is my 4th time. Every time I've been here, things have been pretty safe.
Stick around.
So keep me around here for a little while. To address some of the things, we down in our office, everybody is new down there. Everybody left in the office after and or during, and I don't remember the exact dates for the Black Forest.
Since when? Since last summer?
Right. So the county emergency manager, my boss, Liz Jordan, just started it in August, and we just hired 3 planners to include myself. We all started mid-September, so right at the tail end. I was actually down in Panama City, Florida, when my wife, who, we live a couple of miles south of Black Forest, but I was trying to monitor the fire from 1,500 miles away, because my wife was like, should I evacuate? And I kept trying to tell her, you already have a plan, right? She had a girlfriend on the south side of town. I said, don't wait, just go. He said, it won't hurt you, just go. And then she never did. She just kept waiting for that magical moment for somebody to officially tell her. So I know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for 30 years in emergency management. 6 months just with the sheriff's office, and if we can figure out what you were asking about, how to get people engaged. I was down in Florida with floods where people rebuilt, even though they lost their house before. They rebuilt in the same flood zone. We got people in California that build on the side of a mountain, right?
Same hill.
Yeah, on the same hill, right? I was deployed to Desert Storm, where you had missiles coming over the base and people still ran outside to see where the missiles was going to land, even though you told them to get in the bunker, right? You know, I taught chem warfare for almost 25 years, chemical warfare defense, and it wasn't until 1991, I guess, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, where people would come up to me, Steve, could you, I know I was in your class a month ago, but now I really want to listen and pay attention and learn how to put the gas mask on. So we're always going to have that, I think. But so anyway, back to the present. So you have a brand new staff. The good news is, thanks to this this 1A funding that happened again when I was out of town, it allowed us to double our staff. So you had 2 people trying to run the emergency management for the entire county. So we've been able to put on more planners and stuff. I can't speak, Rich, to the specific thing about the notifications. I just know that Liz Jordan has been going to a lot of meetings, specifically on working with the 911 authority in the Colorado Springs and trying to get a different or new database set up.
There needs to be some alternatives to that system too.
Okay.
Because the whole thing could not work.
Yeah, so right, so what's the plan B? What's the backup?
You know?
Sure. I do know that some of the conversation has been, you're probably more aware of it than I am with Privacy Act stuff. So when you want to collect data to help people, how much is too much, and you know,
Where's the line drawn?
right, where do you draw that line? So I know that's going out. Ryan, on this Ready, Set, Go, you know, we're since the fires, we've actually gotten more interest in our CERT classes that we offer. And again, it's unfortunate that it takes a disaster to get it. But I'd love to talk to you offline to figure out if it's confusing, what, can something be fixed?
So how can the CERT classes be coordinated with the fire department programs? Not just with Black Forest, but I'm asking a global question here.
The only way I can answer that right now is that when we hold the CERT classes, we try to engage with the fire departments to be part of that, come and help teach us.
We've had CERT classes, but they've never been coordinated with the fire department.
I don't know. I'll find out. Just this last Saturday, we had.
They're good classes, but
Yep.
I think it needs to be a unified approach.
Right. Okay. Yeah, the class that we had Saturday was for about 250 Boy Scouts, and it was for them to get their emergency preparedness badge, and a lot of it was along the same curriculum as the CERT classes, and we had the 115th Fire Department that was a big help there. So, so anyway, there's a lot of stuff in the fire that, wrong choice of words. There's a lot of stuff going on with this new crew, trying to get up to speed, trying to, you talked about historical data. So a major plan right now, it's called the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan, and one of the biggest pieces of that is a risk analysis based on historical data and stuff like
You
that.
still have the calendar,
So
the disaster calendars that they used to put out?
I remember that calendar when
Those
Patty
are
Baxter
wonderful
was in charge.
calendars, yes.
Right, I worked up at the Air Force Academy at the time. I was like, can I have some of those for my
We
staff?
need to
So
reinstate that.
I will,
That's a good comment.
I'll add that.
Put all the disasters,
So-
not be selective.
Anyway, yeah, if you have specific questions, I'll try to answer it, or I'll certainly take it back. Even our commander, Commander Paget, came on, I think 1st of October, so he's learning as well. But I'll be happy to, as you can see, I've been taking notes.
How does your
So-
office interact with the fire marshal? Are you separate?
Scott Campbell?
Yeah.
He is in our division. We're Emergency Services Division under Commander John Paget. Has the 2 heads right under him is Liz Jordan, the emergency manager, and then Scott Campbell. We work.
Okay, so they're equal.
Yeah, right. So it's
I didn't
commander.
know how that
Yep. So he's down the hall, and he's built up his staff. He's got a few more permanent party wildland fire folks that he's brought on. We have a new fire investigation person we were able to build on.
Well,
So
that's the other loop that needs to be closed. Because, you know, the reality is in Black Forest is the first people on the scene is going to be the fire department. But the wildland fire responsibility is with the fire department. Okay, and there's a lag when
Right.
you get the crew up there, you know, and I have looked at the emergency preparedness plans, and it's like, you know, this is Nero fiddles while Rome burns, because it's so complicated and bureaucratic, and there needs to be something else worked out to, I think the first thing the fire department needs to do is get a swarm of brush trucks. One brush truck in Black Forest or two is not enough. You know, there needs to be that initial attack, you know, and it needs to have backing people that are out there with wildland fire training that have Pulaski's in the clouds, and they aren't trying to string hose and have it burn up, because that's not the right approach for wildland fire. You know, it
Well,
just isn't, so.
the reason I'm here tonight, and you mentioned this after action report in June, is not to be confused with the other ones, but my main role right now is the sheriff's office, finalizing the sheriff's office Black Forest after action report. So that's why the commander asked me to come down here. And I don't think you'll ever get away from having multiple plans or multiple reports like you mentioned earlier, but the comments,
There needs to
that
be
kind
a
of stuff like
summary
that.
report though, where everybody's working together on it.
Sure, and I think that's what you were suggesting as one of the
I
next
think we all
steps.
want that as a goal, you know?
So I can, those fire-specific things, I guess my point is, those fire-specific things I can certainly collect and make sure that Scott Campbell
And
gets that.
I don't know what kind of equipment the brush truck
Thank you,
carries,
sir.
if it even carries picks in the clouds and, you know, those kinds of hand tools, or if the guys are wearing Nomex or whatever. I don't know what happens at the fire
Kind of
department.
site specific.
But I think
Like
that
tweaks
needs
it different.
to be something that all the North End Fire Department should have the same training for that, if they're doing mutual aid. And they should crosswalk it with the wildland specific kinds of stuff, because it's different than the kinds of things they usually do.
I can't
had
speak,
fire-
I'm not a firefighter, and I
I'm
didn't
not
stay
either,
in
but I
the
had
days in
fire-
last night, but
I had fire training with the US Forest Service.
I was
So
gonna
I
say
had
that
overseen
I do know this much, that they focus a lot on training our folks to national standards.
WCG has got the 7 national standards, National Wildland.
Right, but does the fire
Coordinated.
department, are they trained in that? I don't know.
Some are and some are not. Some of them are done because the individual wants to do it and finds an avenue to make it happen.
But if the guy that's the first 3 guys on the fire, if none of them have had any wildland fire training, that's not as good as if they had.
Well, these are definitely areas where we need to
Truism.
continue to explore, so.
They don't know what
Just
to
kind of
do.
wrapping everything up, again, you know, appreciate the input, I've been taking notes, we also have it online, so people, if you come across people that they weren't able to participate in this, they can go online and access that. I will make sure that, you know, our public service directors has an opportunity to review this. In the event he needs to fine tune some of the after action items. But again, the goal is to, once we roll ours out, to not let the ball drop. We just need to continue moving forward. So thank you very much. The next meeting will be a real short meeting, just another staff reports. If you don't want to hear staff reports, next meeting will probably only be about 30 minutes long. But June,
What days?
in June, we're still waiting. The next meeting in May was going to be May 28th, but the June meeting, I want to finalize. I need to find out exactly when that is. We need to find out the type of venue, whether we just go through and just expand this or whatever. But we want to make sure that we invite everybody out here to really have a good sense of what's happening. So thank you very much, and have a good evening. And if you're Avs fans, go cheer for the Avs.